It was one of those days when the sun seemed determined to melt everything around it. At the gas station where Manuel worked, the heat was almost unbearable. The asphalt shimmered under the relentless sun, and the constant sound of engines and gas pumps filled the hot air. Manuel darted back and forth, attending to customers with a tired but always welcoming smile. Cars lined up, gleaming and new, reflecting the sun like mirrors. Each came with a different driver, some in a hurry, others impatient, but Manuel did his best to serve everyone efficiently. He moved between the vehicles with impressive speed, while sweat trickled down his forehead. The heat was so intense he felt like he was running inside an oven. Among all those modern, shiny cars, Manuel saw a figure that seemed to belong to a different world. An elderly lady, dressed simply and with a look of deep concern, was approaching. Her presence seemed like a pause in the chaos. Her worn clothes contrasted sharply with the opulence of the vehicles around her. Her gaze carried an invisible burden, and her hesitant step showed she was struggling with some difficulty. Despite his exhaustion, Manuel noticed her distress and decided he needed to do something. He stepped away from the hustle and bustle to approach the lady, trying not to show how tired he was. With a warm smile and a gentle voice, he said, "Good afternoon, ma'am. Can I help you with anything?" The lady looked up at him, and Manuel saw a mix of relief and nervousness. She was clearly struggling to find the right words to explain what was happening. The background noise of cars and people seemed to fade away, creating a bubble of silence around them. Manuel realized the problem was more than just hesitation. There was genuine discomfort in her eyes. After a brief moment of silence, the lady finally spoke, her voice almost a whisper. "My name is Mrs. Rosana. I filled up my car, but I ended up forgetting my wallet at home." Manuel felt a pang in his heart. He realized that Mrs. Rosana was genuinely distressed and knew he needed to help in some way. Without hesitation, Manuel took money from his own wallet and, with a kind gesture, said, "Don't worry, Mrs. Rosana. We'll sort this out." He felt a deep satisfaction in helping someone in need, especially on such a tiring day. The look of relief on the lady's face was like a refreshment for his own exhaustion. As he took care of the payment, Manuel thought about how small acts of kindness could make a big difference. That day, the intense heat and the rush of work were momentarily forgotten, replaced by a sense of accomplishment and solidarity. With a calm and determined gesture, Manuel handed the money to Mrs. Rosana. "Don't worry about it now," he said with a gentle smile. "You can pay me back later. I trust you." Mrs. Rosana's eyes filled with tears of gratitude. She looked relieved, but a bit surprised by the unexpected kindness. "Thank you, young man," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I promise I'll return every cent." Manuel nodded, still smiling. "Don't worry about it now. What's important is that you're okay." Mrs. Rosana held Manuel's hand for a moment, showing her gratitude without needing words. Manuel felt a human connection in that gesture, as if they both understood each other without speaking. Deeply touched by Manuel's generosity, Mrs. Rosana began to cry. Her tears reflected genuine relief and a gratitude she was trying to express. "You don't know how much this means to me," she said, her voice full of emotion. She rummaged through her bag and found a piece of paper. With trembling hands, she took out a pen and wrote her name and address. She carefully folded the paper and handed it to Manuel. "So you know where to find me," she said, offering the paper as a guarantee. "I'm trustworthy. You can believe that." Manuel took the paper with a smile and carefully placed it in his uniform pocket. "I believe you, Mrs. Rosana," he replied. "Don't worry about it right now." Meanwhile, some of Manuel's co-workers were watching the scene from a distance. They exchanged skeptical glances. They had seen many tough situations and were used to dealing with problematic clients. So, helping someone in this way seemed out of the ordinary for them. "Manuel, you're too nice," said one of the co-workers, Paolo, shaking his head. "You have to be careful. Not everyone is as honest as they seem." Manuel shrugged, keeping his smile. "I prefer to believe in people until they prove me otherwise," he calmly replied. "I think everyone deserves a chance." Another employee, Marcos, couldn't hold back a sarcastic smile. "That old lady must be a liar," he commented. "There are always some scammers around here." Manuel heard the offensive remarks and felt a pang in his chest. He knew that distrust and cynicism were common in that environment, but he couldn't accept that they would treat Mrs. Rosanna that way. Instead of joining in on the criticism, he approached her, who was still preparing to leave, and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. Mrs. Rosanna looked at him with eyes still filled with gratitude and a hint of sadness from the words she had heard. Manuel looked at his colleagues with a firm gaze, and his voice was filled with determination. "You don't need to worry about what they're saying," he said in a tone loud enough for everyone to hear. "I believe in you. Their words mean nothing." The employees who had made the comments fell silent, with expressions of surprise and a bit of embarrassment. Manuel's attitude, full of conviction and kindness, made it clear that he would not tolerate disrespect towards Mrs. Rosanna. With tears in her eyes, Mrs. Rosanna held Manuel's hand in a silent gesture of thanks. "Thank you once again, my son. Your kindness means a lot to me," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Manuel smiled, feeling a warmth that seemed to surpass the heat of the day. "You're welcome, Mrs. Rosanna. I'm here to help." She nodded and held his hand for a moment longer before letting go and getting into her car. Mrs. Rosanna thanked him one last time, wiping away the tears that were still streaming down her face. She got into the car and waved to Manuel. Before she left, he waved back, feeling a quiet satisfaction for having done what he thought was right. As the car's engine roared and it began to pull away, Manuel watched until the car disappeared from view. As Mrs. Rosanna drove away, Manuel returned to work, but with a renewed sense of inner satisfaction. Helping that lady, even in something seemingly small, gave him a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that despite the busy workday, that gesture made a difference in someone's day, and that was worth much more than any physical effort the job required. The other employees also went back to work, some still casting suspicious glances, but no one made any more sarcastic comments. Manuel knew that his words and actions had made a strong impression. He hoped that maybe, for a moment, this could make his colleagues reconsider their attitudes in the future. The sun continued to shine brightly, but Manuel felt lighter, as if that act of kindness had brightened his day in a special way. As he served the next customers, Manuel couldn't help but think of Mrs. Rosanna and the piece of paper he had in his pocket. He had faith that she would return, but more than that, he believed that, regardless of the outcome, it wasn't about the money. A few minutes after the elderly woman left, the hostility from his co-workers seemed to have diminished a little, and Manuel felt that perhaps his kindness had made a small difference in the world. Manuel's co-workers started whispering and glancing at him while he served the last customers of the day. Manuel tried not to get distracted and focused on his work. When the flow of customers finally began to slow down, he thought he could relax a bit. But his thoughts were interrupted when the manager, Mr. Antonio, called him into the office. Mr. Antonio had a serious expression, one Manuel rarely saw. He gestured to a chair on the other side of the desk and said, "Manuel, I need to talk to you." Manuel sat down and felt a knot in his stomach. He knew something was wrong. "I heard about what happened today," the manager began, choosing his words carefully. "One of the employees told me they saw you taking money from the register to pay for a customer's fuel." Manuel was shocked and saddened by the accusation. He shook his head quickly, denying it. "No, sir, I didn't do that," he replied firmly. "I used my own money to help that lady. She was going through a tough time and looked really worried. I couldn't just leave her without help." Mr. Antonio watched Manuel closely, trying to gauge if he was telling the truth. "So you're saying you used your own money to pay for her fuel?" the manager asked. "Yes, I did," Manuel confirmed, his eyes showing the seriousness of his words. "I thought it was the right thing to do and was willing to risk my own money to help." The manager was silent for a moment, thinking. He had known Manuel for a long time and knew he was an honest and dedicated employee. But he still needed to consider everything before making a decision. "Manuel, your actions were very noble," Mr. Antonio said, softening his expression a bit. "But you need to understand that any movement of money, whether from the register or personal, can be misinterpreted." Manuel nodded, understanding the manager's concern. "Yes, sir, I understand. It was an impulse to help someone in need. I didn't think about the possible consequences. Mr. Antonio listened carefully to Manuel's words and noticed the sincerity in his voice. However, his expression remained serious. "I'm sorry, Manuel, but it's too late," Mr. Antonio said firmly but not harshly. "If we make an exception, others might think they can do the same, and that could create problems. I understand your good intentions, but we need to follow the rules." Manuel knew he had acted from the heart, but now he faced the harsh reality of the rules. Manuel couldn't believe what was happening. He had given his best at work, always helping and doing good, but now he was facing a very difficult situation. The manager, with a cold and unsympathetic tone, said that his good intentions weren't enough and that he was being fired. "Mr. Antonio, please understand," Manuel tried to explain, but the manager interrupted him with a hand gesture. "I understand, Manuel, but the decision has already been made," said the manager. "You need to hand in your badge and keys." Manuel's heart sank. He knew his actions could be misinterpreted, but he never imagined they would lead to his termination. With a sigh, he took the badge and keys from his pocket and placed them on the manager's desk. "I hope you find a place where your good intentions are recognized and valued," said Mr. Antonio, trying to soften the situation a bit. "But here, we need to follow the rules." Manuel stood up, feeling a heavy weight on his shoulders. He nodded to the manager and left the office. Now, the gas station seemed very different, colder and more distant. His co-workers looked at him with curiosity, and some even seemed pleased with what had happened. He walked slowly to his locker, gathered his few belongings, and walked out the front door. The sun was still shining, but the heat of the day seemed to have diminished, reflecting his mood. Manuel left the station with tears in his eyes and a heavy heart from losing his job. Despite his sadness, he didn't regret helping Donna Rosana. His principles were important to him, and that gave him a sense of integrity, even if it wasn't recognized by the company. As he walked home, Manuel reflected on everything that had happened. He knew he had acted from the heart, but he also understood the importance of rules. The manager's lack of compassion left him bitter, but he decided that he wouldn't let this episode change who he was. Manuel would continue to believe in kindness and help others whenever he could. He preferred a world where acts of generosity were the norm, not the exception. With this thought, Manuel moved forward, determined to find a place where his actions were valued and where he could make a difference, even if it was a small one. When he arrived home, he found Aurora in the living room, immersed in her daily activities. Her presence was always a source of comfort for him. Manuel was going through a whirlwind of emotions. He felt an immense sadness, but the image of his mother calmly at home made him feel a bit better. Even knowing that his mother would feel his pain and that he needed to be strong, knowing she was there for him helped Manuel breathe a little easier. He went to the living room, where the familiar surroundings provided a small consolation amidst his sadness. As Manuel entered the room, the aroma of fresh coffee and the soft sound of the radio helped to soothe him. Though he still felt the weight of tears and sadness, being home and near his mother brought temporary relief. Manuel knew that despite the challenges, his mother's love and support would be a safe harbor to face whatever came next. Aurora, his mother, noticed that Manuel was downcast and tried to break the silence with a gentle question. "How was your day, Manuel?" she asked. Manuel hesitated a bit, trying to find the right words. He was so affected by his emotions and the feeling of failure that speaking was difficult. He knew he needed to tell the truth, but it made him feel even more vulnerable. Finally, Manuel found the courage and said with a mix of sadness and determination, "Mom, I lost my job today." Aurora was surprised and concerned. She tried to understand what was happening and, with a visible effort, got up from the sofa and approached Manuel with an expression of genuine care. "What happened, my dear?" she asked in a voice full of tenderness and concern. Manuel felt a lump in his throat, seeing the worry in his mother's eyes. He prepared to explain what had happened, feeling the comfort of the support she always offered. Even with her difficulty in moving, Aurora seemed like an unshakable source of love and understanding. Manuel began to recount what occurred, detailing every moment of his day. He explained how he had met Donna Rosana an elderly woman who struggled to pay for fuel, and how he decided to help her, despite the hostility from his colleagues. With a choked voice, Manuel recounted everything, feeling a bit more relieved to be close to someone who truly cared. Aurora was worried about her son, Manuel. She saw that he was sad, and her silence showed how much she cared. The love between them was strong and warm, like a tight hug that provides security. Even when things were tough, his mother's support was a firm foundation to face any challenge. While Manuel was talking with a manager and was being fired, his 10-year-old sister, Louie, came into the room. She noticed the sadness in her brother's voice and felt the need to get close. With an understanding and caring look, Louie walked over to Manuel and gave him a big hug. "Man," Louie said with a sweet and firm voice, "you did the right thing. What matters is that you help someone in need. We'll get through this. I'm sure of it." Louie's words and embrace brought unexpected comfort to Manuel. Despite being so young, Louie's wisdom and empathy eased his brother's distress. Manuel hugged her back, feeling the warmth and support of sibling affection. Aurora watched with a sad smile. The way Louie handled the situation reflected the loving environment she and Manuel had created at home. Louie's embrace and encouraging words helped lift some of the sadness weighing on Manuel, bringing a new perspective and hope. As Manuel pulled away from the hug, he looked at his sister and mother, feeling a surge of gratitude and relief. The support and understanding of his family made him feel stronger to face what was ahead. Knowing they would be by his side gave him the assurance that, despite the challenges, there was a path forward, and together they could find a solution. Even with concern etched on her face, Aurora tried to stay calm. She knew the family's finances were a constant worry, but her support for Manuel never wavered. Aurora looked at her son with a look of understanding and encouragement. "You've always had a generous heart, Manuel," Aurora said with a soft, yet proud voice. "I believe everything will work out in the end. The kindness you showed today is something rare and valuable." Manuel felt a wave of gratitude upon hearing his mother's words. Despite the disappointment of losing his job and the financial difficulties, he felt strengthened by Aurora and his family's unconditional support. Louie knew that if there was anything to be proud of, it was the fact that his actions were driven by a big heart. Even upon receiving the news of his dismissal, Manuel didn't regret anything. He had helped someone in need, expecting nothing in return. For him, doing good for those in need was more important than any personal problem. Aurora, seeing her son's determination and dignity, believed they would come out of this situation stronger. She had faith that, in the end, the good Manuel did would somehow come back to him. Even though he wasn't recognized by the company, his actions reflected the kind of person who truly mattered. Despite the tense and uncertain atmosphere, the home became a place of support and hope. Aurora and Louie stood by Manuel, offering comfort and strength to face the challenges ahead. Together, as a united family, they were ready to overcome difficulties and find a way forward, believing that things would improve with time. As Aurora and Louie discussed in the living room how they would handle the situation, the phone rang, breaking the heavy silence in the room. The sound of the phone was a reminder that life went on. Manuel, still thinking about the future, got up to answer the call. He saw an unknown number on the screen and, with curiosity and a hint of expectation, answered. "Hello," Manuel said, trying to hide the anxiety in his voice. On the other end of the line, a calm and friendly voice responded. "Hi, my name is Gustavo. I'm the grandson of Dona Rosana, the lady you helped at the gas station today." Manuel was surprised to hear Dona Rosana's name and paid closer attention. "Oh yes, of course. Kenu, Gustavo. How can I help?" Gustavo continued with a warm tone, expressing his gratitude. "I wanted to thank you for helping my grandmother. She told me about what happened, and I'm really touched by your generosity. She spoke about how kind you were." Manuel, relieved and curious, replied, "It was a pleasure to help. She seemed to need it, and I just did what I thought was right." With sincere tone, Gustavo explained, "My grandmother was deeply moved by your generosity. She told the whole story when she got home, and I wanted to call you immediately. I found out that you were let go from your job. Manuel was a bit nervous but tried to stay calm when he answered the phone. On the other end of the line, Gustavo spoke with concern and empathy. "Don't worry, Gustavo. I don't regret helping your grandmother. It was the right thing to do," Manuel replied with a firm and calm tone. Gustavo paused before continuing. "I understand that, and that's why I'm calling. I have a proposal for you. I want to reimburse you for the cost of the fuel, but I also want to talk about something else. Can we set up a meeting?" Manuel was surprised by the offer and Gustavo's kindness. He looked at Aurora and Louis, who were in the room, watching with curiosity and hope. "Sure, Gustavo. I'm available to talk," Manuel said with a smile. Gustavo seemed genuinely grateful and explained, "My grandmother is very thankful for what you did. We want to honor our word." Manuel felt a warmth in his heart upon hearing this. Gustavo's sincerity and the offer to reimburse the fuel were gestures of respect and recognition that he truly appreciated. "I'm touched by your gesture, Gustavo. It will be a pleasure to have you. Come whenever it's convenient for you," Manuel said with a smile on his face. Gustavo thanked him and confirmed the details of the visit. "Thank you for being so understanding, Manuel. I'll be there as soon as possible. See you soon." After hanging up, Manuel looked at Aurora and Louis, who were attentive and hopeful. He excitedly shared the details of the call with them. Aurora and Louis listened with great interest, and their faces lit up upon hearing that a solution might be on the way. The hope that Manuel's kindness would be recognized and rewarded was beginning to take shape. Aurora hugged Manuel, and the room was filled with a new, positive energy. Gustavo's visit and the promise of reimbursement brought a sense that, despite the difficulties, Manuel's kindness and integrity were being valued. Soon, Gustavo arrived at Manuel's house with the fuel payment and a thank you card. He handed the payment to Manuel with a genuine smile, and Manuel, visibly touched by the kindness, accepted the money with gratitude. Manuel wanted to show his appreciation in a special way, so he decided to invite Gustavo for a coffee. When Gustavo arrived, Aurora, Manuel's wife, greeted him with a smile and led him to the living room. As they sat down, Aurora prepared the coffee and brought out some delicious treats. The conversation began casually. Gustavo praised Manuel's attitude and said how nice it was that he had been so kind. Manuel, in turn, asked questions about Gustavo's family and about Dona Rosana, showing his interest in learning more about his guest's life. As they chatted, Gustavo realized how genuinely friendly and generous Manuel was. The room, with its cozy colors and the smell of fresh coffee, seemed to reflect Manuel's warm personality and that of his family. Gustavo saw that, besides being generous, Manuel had a big heart and a kind spirit. The coffee turned into an animated conversation, with the two exchanging stories and experiences. Gustavo felt increasingly connected to Manuel and enjoyed getting to know the person behind such a kind gesture. The meeting, which started with a simple payment, turned into a moment to build a true friendship. As the coffee continued, Gustavo saw the perfect moment to share something important he had been keeping. After hesitating for a moment, he decided to tell the truth. "My grandmother is having memory problems and was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's," Gustavo said, with a sincere and respectful tone. Manuel was surprised and a bit shocked to hear this. He listened attentively as Gustavo explained more about the situation. "She is a wonderful person, but the illness has significantly affected her ability to remember things. I understand that this might have caused some confusion, but even so, she remembered you and was very touched by your help," Gustavo said, with a mix of sadness and gratitude. Gustavo continued, "I just wanted you to know that despite my grandmother's problems, your generosity and patience meant a lot to us. It's important for you to know that your kindness was not only recognized, but genuinely appreciated." Though surprised by the news, Manuel felt relieved to better understand the situation. The explanation about Dona Rosana's condition helped clarify the difficulties she had faced. He felt even more moved and touched by the situation. Manuel looked at Gustavo with a look full of understanding and said, "I'm sorry to hear about your grandmother. I understand that these things can be very difficult. I just did what I thought was right at the time. If you need anything, just let me know." Gustavo, concerned and sincere, explained, "We're trying to adjust to my grandmother's new health issues. We can't leave her alone at home anymore, and it's been a big challenge for all of us. Just today, she drove the car away without anyone noticing." He paused and, looking into Manuel's eyes with gratitude, continued, "What you did was very touching. In such difficult times for our family, your kindness showed that there are still good people in the world. Even without knowing what we were going through, you did what was right." Manuel listened attentively and felt a wave of compassion. He realized how much Gustavo and his family were going through and was grateful to have helped, even without knowing all the details at the time. "I'm almost embarrassed," Manuel said. In the end, it was a simple gesture, but from the heart. The atmosphere was filled with a sense of mutual connection and understanding. Then, Gustavo finally revealed the true reason for the visit with a determined and respectful look. "Actually, I'm the owner of the gas station where everything happened. I want to make an offer to thank you for everything you've done. I would like to offer you a job as the manager of my gas station. I'm sorry you were unjustly dismissed, and Mr. Antonio has already been removed from his position." Manuel was completely taken aback. He looked at Gustavo, stunned and emotional, absorbing what he had just heard. The idea of receiving a promotion instead of a dismissal, especially at such a difficult time, was a very significant gesture. It not only acknowledged Manuel's kindness, but also offered a new opportunity for his future. With eyes shining with gratitude, Manuel thanked Gustavo sincerely. "I don't know how to thank you enough, Gustavo. This means so much to me. I accept the offer with great gratitude and hope to contribute as best as I can to your company." Gustavo smiled, relieved and pleased to have helped. The meeting, which had started with a difficult situation, ended with a gesture of great generosity and a new hope for Manuel's future. Manuel was going through a challenging period in his life. He had faced many difficulties, and despite all his efforts, the future seemed uncertain. But that afternoon, as the sun began to set and the day's shadows grew longer, something unexpected was about to happen. He was at the gas station where he worked, tired but with a sense of accomplishment for having helped Dona Rosana, an elderly customer who always relied on his kindness and patience. Suddenly, Gustavo, a man with a firm gaze and encouraging voice, walked in. Manuel knew Gustavo was the manager of an important company, but he never imagined that visit would change his life. Gustavo greeted Manuel with a warm smile and, before starting the conversation, took a brief pause to observe the surroundings. He noticed Manuel's dedication and positive attitude, even in the simplest tasks. Without further ado, Gustavo began speaking with a tone of confidence that made Manuel's heart race. "Manuel, I trust you deeply," Gustavo began, looking intently into Manuel's eyes as if he wanted him to see the sincerity in every word. "I've noticed how much you've cared and worked hard here at the station. Your dedication and compassion are evident, and I believe you would be perfect for a new challenge." Gustavo paused significantly, allowing his words to sink in for Manuel. The surroundings seemed to hush, as if the world was waiting to see Manuel's reaction. "Tomorrow morning, you'll receive a quick training. From now on, you'll be the manager. I'm convinced that your work ethic, compassion, and leadership skills will add tremendous value to our team." Manuel was momentarily stunned. Emotion began to well up in his eyes, and although he tried to maintain his composure, it was impossible to hide the wave of feelings enveloping him. Gustavo had not only offered a new opportunity, but had also given a profound acknowledgement of his character and effort. Manuel felt as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders, and at the same time, a new light had appeared before him. With a choked voice and teary eyes, Manuel responded, "Gustavo, your words mean so much to me, not just because of the offer, but because you saw the value in what I did. I'm truly grateful for this chance and ready to start." Gustavo smiled, visibly pleased with the response. "I'm excited to work with you, Manuel. I believe you'll bring a new perspective and great value to our team. Let's plan the training and discuss the next steps." Manuel, feeling a mix of relief and excitement, thanked him again. Gustavo's visit turned what could have been just another tough day into a great opportunity. With a new job on the horizon and recognition of his dedication, Manuel felt revitalized and ready to tackle the challenges ahead. The prospect of a fresh start and being part of something bigger brought a new light to his future. The next morning, with the sun shining and a new chapter beginning, Manuel approached the training with renewed determination. He prepared for the new role with the same zeal and empathy he had shown in helping Mrs. Rosanna. His dedication and leadership skills soon stood out. He was recognized for his ability to lead the team with a blend of empathy and effectiveness, helping to improve the station and increase customer satisfaction. Manuel's effort and commitment did not go unnoticed. He became an example of how kindness and integrity can open unexpected doors and create new opportunities. And so, Manuel found not only a new job, but also new hope and a promising future. Manuel was a dedicated employee, always ready to help those in need. However, at the gas station where he worked, he faced mockery and disdain. Paulo and Marcos, his co-workers, would often laugh at his kindness, especially when he helped Mrs. Rosanna, an elderly and needy woman who frequently visited the station. They thought Manuel was being foolish, not realizing that this act of generosity was about to transform not only Manuel's life, but theirs as well. Then something incredible happened. Manuel was promoted to manager, a position that brought not only a new status, but also the long-desired financial stability. The change was swift and striking. With the new job, the worries that had once dominated his days disappeared. Aurora, his sister, and Louis, his mother, felt a profound relief and renewed happiness. The tension that used to hang over the family, with mounting bills and constant doubt about the future, began to dissipate. Now, Manuel had the opportunity to transform his family's life. He could pay all the bills without difficulty and even provide a comfort he had never imagined possible. The smile on his mother's face and his sister's joy were the greatest gifts for him. Manuel felt proud and fulfilled, knowing that he had followed his heart and done what he believed was right, even when it seemed to risk his previous position. As the new manager, Manuel not only performed his duties with competence, but also with a generous heart and impeccable integrity. He was dedicated to creating a welcoming and positive environment for his team. The change in his attitude and the way he led were visible to everyone around him. Paulo and Marcos, who had previously mocked Manuel, began to admire his work and worry about the possibility of losing their own jobs. They realized that Manuel had not only risen in life, but had also become an example of how kindness and dedication truly make a difference. Gustavo's unexpected gesture, offering Manuel the new position, was a confirmation that kindness is rewarded in surprising ways. Manuel saw that, despite the injustices and challenges he had faced, the universe had a special way of returning the good he had sown. This recognition brought immense comfort and a sense that his actions had true meaning and real impact. Over time, Manuel continued to shine in his new role. He led not only with efficiency, but also with empathy, creating a work environment where everyone felt valued and respected. Customers noticed the difference in the service and frequently praised the attentive service and efficiency of the station. Manuel showed that even the simplest acts of kindness have the power to create unexpected connections and transform lives. The story of Manuel and Gustavo spread, inspiring many to follow the example of generosity and kindness. What began with a simple gesture of helping an elderly woman turned into a life-changing opportunity for Manuel and a lesson on how kindness can open doors and create new possibilities, even in difficult times. Manuel continued to touch the lives of those around him with his story, demonstrating that integrity and a generous heart can create a legacy of hope and inspiration. The cycle of kindness that began with a sincere gesture at the gas station proved that, in the end, the good we do for others can return to us in wonderful and enriching ways. So, did you enjoy the story? The Universo Yen Palabras channel greatly appreciates your company. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your comment below to let us know what you thought. See you next time.